10 conversations. If you have been here from the beginning, if you found the first one and something in it sent you to the second and then the third, and then somehow here, then something in you already knows what this space has been building toward, has felt it perhaps not as a concept but as a quality of shift, a gradual, incremental, sometimes barely perceptible, and sometimes startlingly clear movement in the direction of something that feels more and more like the real thing, like yourself. And if this is the first conversation you have encountered in this space, if something brought you here today to this specific exploration without the 9 that preceded it, then welcome. Everything you need is here. The 10 conversations form a complete whole, and this one stands on its own. But I hope it sends you backward as well as forward, because what we have been building together across these explorations is something worth receiving in full. In the first conversation, we established the foundation that you are not a passive recipient of experience, but a participant in its creation. That the world you inhabit is, in the most precise and operative sense, a mirror of the frequency you are broadcasting. That the work, all the work, is the work of changing the signal. In the second, we explored what chasing actually broadcasts. The urgent, reaching, lack-driven wanting that sends a signal of absence and receives absence in return. And what becomes possible in the open hand. In the third, we descended into silence, into the understanding that the noise, the relentless inner commentary that most people mistake for thinking, is the primary interference in the signal. And that silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of the ground itself. In the fourth, we change the questions, recognizing that the mind is a faithful instrument that finds exactly what it is directed to look for. And that directing it differently from genuinely different questions opens genuinely different fields of possibility. In the fifth, we open the door. We turn toward the emotions that had been avoided. The grief, the fear, the shame, the loneliness, and discovered what lives on the other side of the turning. Not destruction, freedom. In the sixth, we crossed the threshold into the understanding that what we most want is not waiting to be created. It already exists in the field, complete, and the work is not manufacturing a future, but aligning with the one that is already done. In the seventh, we met her, the version of you that has it all, not as a distant aspiration, but as a present depth, already beneath the layers, already real, already at the level of your original frequency, you. In the eighth, we found the mechanism, the precise, physiologically grounded, scientifically supported answer to what the universe is actually responding to. Your nervous system state, your coherence, the quality of the ventral vagal signal, not your words or your thoughts or your conscious beliefs, your actual embodied biological state. In the ninth, we went into the pattern, the specific repeating configurations of experience that persist across changing surface circumstances because the signal generating them has not yet changed. And we discovered that the pattern is not the enemy, it is the portal, the doorway to exactly the work that is most specifically yours to do. And now, in the 10th, we arrive here, at the difference between forcing and flowing, at the question that underlies every question in this entire series, that lives at the heart of every practice and every insight and every moment of genuine shift. The question of how to be in right relationship with the intelligence that is moving through you and through your life. The question of when to act and when to rest, when to push and when to yield, when the effort is the thing that is needed and when the effort is the thing that is in the way. The question, in its simplest and most direct form, of how to live. Not from force, from flow. Let's find out what that means, precisely, practically, in the specific, ordinary, irreplaceable texture of your specific and irreplaceable life. We live in a culture that is deeply, structurally, almost religiously committed to force. Not force in the crude sense, not violence or coercion, but force in the specific sense of the belief that the way to achieve anything worth achieving is through the sustained application of will. That effort is always virtuous, that harder is always better, that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is closed primarily through the quality and quantity of your pushing. This belief is so pervasive, so woven into the fabric of how most people relate to ambition and growth and the project of building a life, that it is virtually invisible. Like water to fish, like air to lungs, it is simply the medium. The assumed, unexamined, seemingly obvious truth about how things get done. You want the life you want? Work harder, push more, discipline yourself into the shape that the desired life requires. Want it enough, try enough, sacrifice enough, and eventually, through the sheer sustained application of enough will, enough effort, enough relentless forward motion, you will arrive. And here is the seductive thing about this belief. It is not entirely wrong. Effort matters. Work matters. Discipline matters. The person who wants a different life and takes no action toward it is not practicing flow. They are practicing avoidance dressed up as spiritual acceptance. The willingness to do the difficult thing, to persist through the inevitable friction, to show up consistently even when the motivation has faded. This is real and it is necessary. But force and effort are not the same thing. In this distinction, between the effort that is aligned and the effort that is forced, between the action that arises from the ground of genuine flow and the action that is driven by the anxiety of a life being lived against the grain of its own nature. This distinction is everything. Force is the effort of a life fighting itself. Effort is the engagement of a life moving with itself. Force generates friction. Effort generates momentum. Force depletes. Effort, when it is genuinely aligned, replenishes. Force produces results at enormous cost and then collapses when the cost can no longer be sustained. Aligned effort produces results that accumulate, that compound over time in the direction of a life that becomes more itself rather than more exhausted. Most people cannot tell the difference from the inside because force is so culturally validated, so consistently celebrated, so deeply associated with the self-image of a serious person who takes their life seriously, that it feels from within like virtue, like the right way to be. But the body knows. The body always knows. Force has a specific physiological signature. We have been learning to read this signature across the entire series. It is the sympathetic nervous system state. The activation, the bracing, the shallow breath and the tight jaw and the contracted shoulders and the chronic low-grade sense of running slightly behind whatever it is you are chasing. The feeling of effort that is always one step short of enough. The quality of a life being held together through the sustained effort of will. Flow has a different signature. The ventral vagal state, the regulation, the full breath and the open chest and the quality of ease that is not the absence of engagement, but the engagement of a system that is aligned rather than opposed. The feeling of effort that produces not depletion, but the particular aliveness of doing exactly what you are here to do. The difference is not in how much you do, it is in the state from which what you do it, and learning to tell the difference. Learning to read the body's signal with enough sensitivity to know when you are forcing and when you are flowing is perhaps the most practical skill this entire series has been building toward. Let me define flow precisely, not in the colloquial sense, not the flow state of peak performance psychology, though that is related, in the deeper sense, the sense that is relevant to the whole of a life, not just the moments of exceptional creative or athletic performance. Flow in this sense is the quality of movement that arises when the inner state is aligned with the direction of the movement, when the nervous system, the emotions, the beliefs, the desires, and the actions are all oriented in the same direction. When the signal is coherent, when the broadcast is clear, when the person is not divided against themselves, the movement that results has a specific quality. It has the quality of rightness, not the absence of difficulty. Flow does not mean everything is easy, but a quality of fundamental correctness, of being on the right path, of the effort you are expending going somewhere, accumulating, compounding in the direction of something real. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, whose decades of research on the flow state is among the most important in modern psychology, described flow as the state in which a person is fully absorbed in an activity that precisely matches their skill level, challenging enough to be engaging, manageable enough to avoid overwhelm, the state of optimal experience in which time moves differently, in which self-consciousness dissolves, in which the person is simply completely in the doing. This is real, and the conditions Csikszentmihalyi describes. The precise match of challenge and capacity, the full engagement, the dissolution of self-monitoring, are the conditions of the ventral vagal state applied to action, the state of genuine safety and genuine engagement in which the nervous system can be both active and regulated, both fully present and free of the interference of the threat response. But the flow state in this deeper sense extends beyond the exceptional moments of absorption into creative or athletic work. It is, at its most fundamental, a quality of relationship with the self, with the life, with the intelligence that is moving through the life. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, effortless action, action without forcing, not passivity. The Tao Te Ching is not a manual for an action, but the specific quality of action that arises when the actor is aligned with the natural movement of things rather than fighting against it. When the effort expended is precisely what the situation requires. No more, no less. And is directed with genuine precision at exactly the right point. They use the image of water. Water does not force its way to the sea. It does not deliberate or plan or apply strategic effort. It simply responds with total faithfulness to the gravity of its own nature, and in doing so, finds its way through every obstacle, around every resistance, to exactly where it needs to go. Not because it is passive, because it is perfectly aligned. This is flow, and this is what the entire arc of these 10 conversations has been building toward. Because everything we have explored, the silence, the open hand, the changed questions, the opened emotions, the completed future, the real self, the nervous system state, the pattern as portal. All of it has been, in different language and from different angles, the same essential project. The project of removing the obstacles to the natural flow of your own life, of clearing the interference from the signal, of aligning the inner state with the direction that is most genuinely, most specifically, most irreducibly yours. Not towards someone else's destination, toward your own. The one that is, as we explored in Script 6, already done. Already existing in the field, already generating the pull of genuine attraction toward it, already doing its part of the work, waiting only for the inner alignment that allows you to flow toward it, rather than forcing your way towards something that may or may not be it. Let me tell you about a man named Anton. Anton was 49 and had spent most of his professional life building a career that was, by every external measure, successful, genuinely successful. Not a performance of success, not the appearance of it. The real thing, built through real effort and real talent and years of sustained, disciplined, impressively organized application of will. And he was exhausted. Not the exhaustion of burnout, though that was present too. Something deeper, the exhaustion of a man who had been forcing a life into a shape that was not quite the right shape, who had been applying enormous effort in a direction that was not quite the wrong direction, but not quite the right one either, who had built through the sheer quality of his will something that worked and that meant nothing. He described it once as the exhaustion of being very good at the wrong thing. Not wrong in the moral sense, wrong in the frequency sense. The career was not the signal. The career was the force-shaped approximation of the signal. The best his will had been able to produce in the absence of the inner alignment that would have produced something genuinely his. The shift came slowly, not in a single dramatic moment of departure. Anton did not quit his career and move to a mountain, but in a gradual, patient, sometimes frightening process of learning to distinguish, in the daily choices of his professional life, between the actions that felt forced and the actions that felt different. Not easier necessarily, but more genuinely motivated, more alive, more connected to something in him that was not just the machinery of the will, but the actual felt embodied signal of a person moving in the direction of his own nature. He began to follow those signals, carefully, one small choice at a time, not abandoning what he had built, using it as the platform from which to begin, incrementally orienting toward what was genuinely his. It took 5 years. The career that emerged at the end of those 5 years was not dramatically different from the one that preceded it in its externals, but in its quality, in the felt sense of doing it, in the energy it produced rather than consumed, in the degree to which it expressed rather than suppressed the genuine frequency of the person doing it. It was unrecognizable. He was not working less hard. He was working from a different inner state, from the alignment rather than the force, from the flow rather than the push. And the difference, in what the work produced, in how it was received, in the quality of every day spent doing it, was everything. The question I am most frequently asked in the context of this work is this: how do I know when I am forcing and when I am flowing? How do I distinguish between the effort that is aligned? That is the genuine engagement of a person moving in the right direction, and the effort that is forced. That is the anxious, activated, signal-contaminating push of a person fighting the current. It is a genuine question, and the answer, like most genuine answers, is less simple than we might wish. Because forcing and flowing do not always feel dramatically different from the outside, or even from the inside. Both involve effort, both involve difficulty, both involve the sustained engagement of a person working towards something. The difference is in the quality, and that quality is most reliably readable in the body. Here is what force feels like in the body when you learn to read it honestly. Force feels contracted. There is a tightness in it. In the chest, the belly, the jaw, the shoulders, a quality of bracing, of holding something together that would otherwise fall apart. The breath is shallow in force. The muscles are working slightly harder than the situation requires, maintaining the specific tension of a system that is doing something that does not fully agree with itself. Force has an urgency quality, a quality of I have to, I must. If I don't, then something bad will happen. Not the clean urgency of genuine excitement. The fearful urgency of a person who believes they cannot afford to stop pushing. The driven quality of a life whose engine is anxiety rather than genuine desire. Force has a depletion arc. The more you do it, the less you have. The effort does not replenish. It draws from a finite reserve that becomes, over time, measurably smaller, until the day. And it always comes when the reserve is insufficient and something has to give. Force produces resistance, not always immediately, but the longer force is applied in a misaligned direction, the more it encounters the specific friction of a life being asked to go somewhere it does not naturally want to go. The obstacles that multiply rather than resolve. The doors that stay closed despite increasing effort. The sense of pushing against something that does not yield. Here is what flow feels like in the body. Flow feels open, not relaxed in the way of rest. Engaged, active, present, but open. The chest expansive, the breath full, the muscles working at exactly the level the task requires. No more, no less. The specific physiological quality of a system that is in alignment with what it is doing. Flow has a quality of genuine desire, not the anxious urgency of force. The clean, spacious, motivated quality of a person who wants to do the thing they are doing. Not because they have to, because something in them is genuinely called by it. Because the doing of it produces, even when it is difficult, a quality of aliveness that the not doing would lack. Flow has a replenishment arc. The more you do it, the more you have. Not in the sense that flow is never tiring. It can be profoundly tiring, in the specific way that genuinely good, genuinely aligned work tires you. But the tiredness of flow is different from the depletion of force. It is the tiredness of having genuinely spent something on something that deserved it. The specific, satisfied exhaustion of a craftsperson at the end of a day of real work. Flow produces synchronicity, the doors that open without forcing, the people who appear at the right time, the resources that arrive precisely when they are needed. Not because flow is magic, because flow is the aligned signal, the coherent broadcast, the state that the field responds to most precisely and most generously. Let me give you a practical test, a single question that, when answered honestly and in the body rather than the mind, reliably distinguishes force from flow. The question is, if I knew with absolute certainty that this action would not produce the result I am hoping for, if the outcome were guaranteed to be absent, would I still do this? Not as a trick, as a genuine inquiry. If the answer is yes, if the doing of the thing would have value independent of the result, if the engagement itself carries something real regardless of what it produces, that is flow. That is the signal of genuine alignment. The action that is worth doing because of what it is, not only because of what it might generate. If the answer is no, if the only value of the action is instrumental, if it is being done entirely for the sake of the outcome and would be pointless without it, that is force. That is the signal of misalignment. The action driven by the outcome rather than by the genuine calling of the person doing it. This does not mean that every action in a life should be intrinsically valuable independent of its results. Practical life requires instrumental actions, but the texture of the day, the quality of the engagement, the inner state from which most actions arise, can be assessed with this question, and the assessment tells you with considerable precision whether you are primarily in force or primarily in flow. Let me name the specific forms that force takes in daily life, because force, like avoidance and like comparison and like the wrong questions, wears many faces. And until you can recognize its specific expressions in your own experience, it will continue to generate its specific quality of friction and depletion without the mind ever quite catching it. Force as overwork. This is the most visible and most culturally celebrated form. The person who works too much, sleeps too little, fills every available space with productivity, has made the calendar into a fortress against the feeling of not doing enough. The force here is the anxious application of effort beyond the point of genuine engagement. The continuation of work past the point at which the nervous system is in flow and into the territory of the diminishing returns of chronic activation. The body knows when work has passed from flow into force. The quality of what is produced changes. The engagement becomes mechanical. The decisions become worse. The creativity that was present in the morning is absent by mid-afternoon because the nervous system, having been pushed past its window of genuine engagement, has shifted into the threat response mode of a system that is running on depletion rather than genuine resource. The intervention is not to work less. It is to work more honestly, to stay within the window of genuine engagement, to stop when the flow has ended rather than when the clock says you are allowed to, and to trust. This is the leap that force culture makes most difficult. That the work done from genuine flow will produce more than the work done from force, even if the hours logged are fewer. Force is spiritual bypassing. This is the form most common in the conscious creation space, and therefore the one most worth naming directly in this context. Spiritual bypassing, a term coined by psychologist John Wellwood, is the use of spiritual ideas and practices to avoid the genuine, difficult, embodied work of interchange. The deployment of concepts like surrender, detachment, high vibration, and flow as ways of not feeling difficult feelings, not confronting difficult patterns, not doing the specific and demanding work that genuine transformation requires. It wears the language of flow, but carries the energy of avoidance. And avoidance, as we explored in Script 5, is a form of force. The force of keeping the door closed, of maintaining the distance from the material that genuinely needs to be approached. The person who practices spiritual bypassing is working very hard. The hard work is just hidden under the performance of ease, under the curated expression of high vibration, under the language of surrender that conceals the iron grip of a self that has found a sophisticated way to never actually let go. Genuine flow does not bypass, it goes through. It meets what is there in the body at the somatic level with a window of tolerance precision we explored in Script 9. It does not pretend that patterns are not present. It engages them with a specific, patient, physiologically grounded tools that actually change them. If you are using flow as a reason not to feel something, if surrender is your strategy for not doing the difficult inner work, then what you are practicing is force dressed up in flow's language. Force as perfect condition seeking. This is the force that says, I will begin when the conditions are right, when I feel ready, when the fear has passed, when the circumstances have aligned, when I have done enough preparation to be certain of the outcome. The conditions will never be perfectly right. The fear will not pass before the beginning. It passes, if it passes, through the beginning. The circumstances align in response to the beginning, not before it. The person who waits for perfect conditions is applying force in the specific direction of keeping themselves still, holding the life in place with considerable effort under the appearance of patience or discernment. Genuine flow does not require perfect conditions. It begins in the conditions that are present, trusting that the movement itself will adjust the conditions as it goes. Water does not wait for the perfect riverbed. It moves in the direction of its own nature and shapes the bed through the moving. Force as comparison-driven action. The action taken because someone else is doing it. The trajectory pursued because it matches the trajectory of the people being compared to. The life being shaped not by the genuine signal of the person living it, but by the external standards of the people they are measuring themselves against. This form of force is particularly insidious because it can produce results. Impressive, visible, externally measurable results that are entirely divorced from the genuine frequency of the person producing them. The achievement that means nothing, the success that feels like the wrong success, the life that works on paper and feels from the inside like someone else's. We met this with Marcus in Script 4. We met it with May in Script 7, and it appears in some form in the story of almost everyone who has spent significant time pursuing the wrong destination for the right reasons. The intervention is not to stop achieving. It is to begin asking, with genuine seriousness, whether the direction of the achieving is genuinely yours, whether the destination you are forcing yourself toward is the one your actual signal is pointing to, which requires, first, knowing what your actual signal is pointing to, which requires the silence of Script 3, the changed questions of Script 4, the emotional opening of Script 5, the recognition of the completed self of script 7, which is why the whole series arrived at here forms a complete whole. Here is what I want you to understand about flow that goes beyond the practical and into the territory that matters most. Flow is not a technique. It is not a state you achieve through the correct combination of practices and mindset adjustments. It is not something you produce. It is something you allow. Something that is already present, already moving, already carrying the intelligence of the completed future toward you. When you stop placing obstacles in its way, the obstacles are the force, the clearing of the obstacles. The work of every conversation in this series is what allows the flow to express. And the flow itself, the natural movement of a life aligned with its own deepest nature, carries an intelligence that the forcing self cannot access. Let me say this clearly, because it is the most important thing I have to offer in the entire series. Your life has a direction, not a predetermined, fixed, no choice available direction, but a genuine, real, already existing direction that is the expression of your specific nature, your specific gifts, your specific contribution to the world. The direction that the field is already generating, already pulling toward, already broadcasting as the completed version of your life. And the forcing self, the self that is operating from the anxious, activated, misaligned with its own nature energy of the culture of force, cannot perceive this direction clearly because its perceptual field is narrowed by the threat response, because its attention is consumed by the management of the gap rather than the reception of the signal, because the noise, the relentless inner commentary, the chronic comparison, the forced trajectory, is louder than the quiet, steady, always present pull of the genuine direction. The flowing self, the self that has done enough of the work to access the ventral vagal state with sufficient consistency to have cleared enough of the interference from the signal, to have opened enough of the closed doors and changed enough of the wrong questions and released enough of the chase, can perceive the direction. Not perfectly, not always, not without the continuing need for practice and discernment and the patient work of distinguishing flow from bypassing and genuine desire from conditioned wanting, but increasingly, reliably, with a quality of inner compass that improves, as all compasses improve, through consistent and honest use. And when you can perceive the direction, when the signal of your genuine nature is clear enough to feel, to follow, to act from, the quality of everything changes. Let me tell you about Adizi. Adiz was 42, and she had spent 15 years in a profession she was genuinely skilled at, and that had never, not for a single day of those 15 years, felt like hers. She knew this. She had always known it, but knowing it had not, for the first decade, been sufficient to produce action, because the action required the letting go of the established, stable, financially secure, professionally respected career, and the movement towards something she could not yet fully see, felt from within the force culture framework she had been operating from, like irresponsibility, like the behavior of someone who had not yet grown up, who had not accepted the adult reality that you work hard at the thing that works, and you manage the feeling that it isn't quite right. The shift in Adiz's understanding came through this kind of work, through the gradual, careful development of the capacity to distinguish between the voice of the forced self, the managed, maintained, responsible voice of a person keeping a life together through will, and the quieter, more persistent, completely undramatic voice of the flow direction, the signal she had been receiving faintly for 15 years. The signal said, not this, not dramatically, not urgently. Just, this isn't it. The direction is elsewhere. You know the direction. You have always known the direction. She did know. She had known since she was 7 years old, in the specific, uncomplicated way that children know things before they were taught to doubt the knowing. The direction was writing. Not the professional writing she had occasionally done on the edges of her real career. Something more direct, more personal, more fully an expression of the specific frequency she had been broadcasting quietly her entire life. The movement toward it was not dramatic, not a single leap, a series of small, patient, sometimes frightening, consistently flowing choices that gradually, over 3 years, reoriented the whole trajectory of her professional life toward the direction that had always been the actual direction. She did not quit her career on a Tuesday afternoon. She began writing on Tuesday afternoons, and then more of them, and then the writing found its audience. And the audience found more of the writing, and the career that had felt like the responsible one gradually became the less sustainable one, and the thing she had been moving toward, slowly in the direction of the signal, with the patience of someone who had learned to trust the flow, became the thing itself. She said in describing this process, something that has stayed with me. She said, "It was not that the writing was easier than the career. Some of it was much harder, but the hardness felt different. It felt like the right kind of hard, like the effort that was being spent was going somewhere real, accumulating into something genuine, producing not depletion, but the specific, sustaining aliveness of work that is genuinely yours. The effort was the same. The direction was different. The flow was the direction. This is what becomes available when you can hear the signal clearly enough to follow it. Not an easier life, a more genuinely yours one." This is the final practice of this series, and I want to do something a little different in it. I want to take you back through all 10 conversations, all 10 of the places we have been together, and then bring you forward into the flow that this entire journey has been building toward. Find your position. Let everything settle. This is not a quick practice. Let yourself arrive fully into it. There is nothing else that needs to happen right now. Nowhere else to be. Nothing else to attend to. You are here, and that is enough. Take a breath, a real one, and close your eyes. Begin by arriving in the body. The specific, physical, real sensation of you here in this moment. The weight of your hands in your lap. The support beneath you. The temperature of the air on your skin. Feel how far you have come, even in the act of arriving here. The willingness to be present with yourself. Fully, honestly, without management or performance, is itself the evidence of growth, of the signal shifting. Now, let's go back to the beginning. The first conversation. You create your reality. Bring to mind the version of yourself who arrived at that first conversation. The specific quality of inner state. The particular mixture of hope and skepticism, and the quiet, underneath everything, of genuine longing for something more fully yours. Feel that version of yourself with compassion, with the warmth of someone who knows how that story ends, who knows what was coming. Pause, and feel the shift that has occurred, even partially, even incompletely, even in the imperfect way that genuine change always happens. In the quality of your relationship to yourself and your life since that beginning. Something has moved. Something is different. Even if you cannot fully articulate it. Even if the external circumstances are not yet fully reflecting it. The signal has shifted. The frequency has changed. Acknowledge that. Let it be real. Now, the silence of the third conversation. Feel what silence is now, after the practice. Not the imposed quiet of the external environment, but the inner silence. The quality of the ground beneath the noise that you have been learning to access. The okayness that was always there, waiting for the noise to quiet enough to become audible. Can you feel it? Even a thread of it? Even right now, in this moment, let the silence deepen slightly. not forcing it, just orienting toward it, the way you have been learning to orient. Through breath, through the witness quality, through the consistent practice of turning toward the ground rather than away from it. Now, the open hand of the second conversation. Feel what your relationship to your desires is like now, after the work of releasing the chase, after the understanding that wanting from fullness is a different broadcast than wanting from lack. Let a desire come forward, one thing you genuinely want, and feel the quality of the wanting. Is it gripping, or is it the clean, spacious, open-handed quality of a desire held by someone who is already in some essential way, okay? Even if the grip is still present, even if the wanting still carries some of the old urgency, notice it without judgment and offer it the gentle orientation of the open hand, not a demand that it immediately change, just a direction, just the practice. Now, the emotions of the fifth conversation. Feel what the inner weather is like in this moment, not what it should be, what it actually is, whatever is here, whatever quality of feeling is present in the body right now. Turn toward it rather than away. Acknowledge it. Give it the 30 seconds of honest attention that begins to change the relationship. Pause and feel the ground that is present even within whatever weather is moving through. The awareness that holds the feeling without being defined by it. The sky that is larger than any weather it contains. Now, the completed future of the sixth conversation. From this still, present, grounded place, let the completed version of your life be present, not ahead of you, beneath you. The version that already exists in the field, already whole, already generating the pull of genuine attraction. Let it be felt, not as a specific imagined future, but as a quality of frequency, a quality of inner state, the specific felt sense of a life that has fully expressed the genuine signal of the person living it. Feel that quality. Let it be as real as it is. Let it register in the body. And now, the version of you from the seventh conversation, the one who has it all, not as an aspiration, as a present depth. Let her be here, in this moment, in this meditation, in the felt sense of her qualities, her ease, her trust, her clean desire, her open-handed relationship to the world. She is here. She has always been here, beneath everything that has been clearing. And now, from this place of genuine inner arrival, feel the flow, not as a concept, as a physiological reality. The quality of movement that is available when the inner state is aligned, when the signal is clear, when the nervous system is in the ventral vagal frequency of genuine safety and genuine connection, when the door is open, when the questions point in the right direction, when the patterns are understood rather than feared. Feel the quality of a life that is moving not through force, not through the anxious application of will, but through the natural, intelligent, completely inevitable movement of water finding its way to the sea. This is the direction, the specific, felt, embodied quality of movement in alignment with your own deepest nature. This is the flow. And from here, from this quality of inner state, from this frequency, from this precisely aligned inner landscape, I want you to feel what action looks like. Not forced action, not the anxious productivity of a person running from insufficiency, but the specific, natural, motivated, genuinely yours action that arises from a being who is in flow. What wants to be done? What is the next right step from here, from this quality of inner state? Not the should, not the strategic, not the thing the forced self would push toward. What does the flow self? The version of you who is genuinely, cleanly aligned. What does she move toward from here? Let whatever arises arise, without forcing, without managing. Just let the intelligence of the flow indicate the direction. Stay here as long as feels right, in the flow, in the alignment, in the specific, living, completely real quality of a being who has done enough of the work to know where the signal is pointing. And trust it, even if it surprises you, even if it is smaller or quieter or less dramatic than the force self expected. Trust the quiet, trust the signal, trust the direction that arises from the ground rather than from the anxiety. Take a full, complete breath. Let it be the breath of someone who has arrived somewhere real. And when you're ready, gently carrying everything that is present in this space, come back. Welcome back. Let me give you the practical architecture, the specific, daily, week-by-week structure of a life that is being actively, consciously oriented toward flow rather than force. Not as a rigid protocol, as a living framework that you will inevitably adapt to the specific conditions of your own life, but as a map, the most complete map this series can offer. Morning, the signal before the noise. Before the day generates its demands. Before the phone, the inbox, the schedule, the needs of others. 10 minutes for the signal. Begin with the physiological sigh and 2 to 3 minutes of extended exhale breathing. Give the nervous system the physiological input of regulation before the day has a chance to pull it into activation. Then, 5 minutes of asking the flow question. Not what do I need to do today? That question belongs to the force self. The flow question is, what is genuinely calling me today? Not the strategic, not the obligatory, not the should. What is the quality of genuine calling? The thing that, if you follow it, will produce the specific aliveness of aligned action rather than the specific depletion of forced effort. Let the answer arise from the body, not the mind, from the ground of regulation that the breathing has produced, from the witness quality that the silence has been cultivating. And then, before you open the inbox, before the day assembles its claims on your attention, take one action in the direction of the calling, even a small one, even 5 minutes. The day, begun from the signal rather than from the noise, has a different quality from that point forward. Throughout the day, the flow check-in. Several times during the day. Before significant decisions, before significant interactions, whenever you notice the quality of engagement has changed, run the 2-question check-in. Question 1, am I in force or in flow right now? Read the body, the contraction or the openness, the shallow breath or the full one, the quality of urgency, fearful or genuine. Question 2, if I am in force, what would it take to return to flow? Not always a long answer. Sometimes one breath, a brief moment of somatic grounding. The physiological sigh. The question changed from the force version to the flow version. The decision to stop for 5 minutes before continuing. Sometimes the answer is more substantial. You need to eat, to rest, to end the workday, to have the conversation you've been avoiding, to do the emotional work that the force has been pushing past. Whatever the answer, act on it, not later, now. The 5 minutes spent returning to flow is worth more than the next hour spent in force. Weekly, the force flow inventory. Once a week, spend 15 minutes with this question. Where this week was I primarily in force, and where was I primarily in flow? Not as self-criticism, as information, as the map-making that allows the work to become increasingly precise. In force, what was the driver? Anxiety, comparison, the force culture's voice, the identity immune system's resistance to change, something that needed to be felt and wasn't. In flow, what were the conditions? What was the inner state? What made the alignment available in that specific context that wasn't available in the context of force? The patterns that emerge from this weekly inventory become the most personalized guidance available because they are specific to you, to your particular nervous system, your particular triggers, your particular conditions for flow. No external resource can give you this map. Only the honest, weekly, non-judgmental examination of your own experience can. Monthly, the direction check. Once a month. At a level above the weekly inventory, ask the larger question. Is the direction I am moving genuinely mine? Not, is it successful? Not, is it what I planned? But is the direction of my life, the overall orientation of my effort, the destination I am moving toward, genuinely aligned with the signal, with the genuine frequency of the person I am most fully becoming? This question requires courage, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the honest answer reveals that a significant recalibration is needed, that the direction has been more force than flow for longer than is sustainable, that the signal has been pointing elsewhere and the force self has been overriding it. When that is the answer, and when the courage to face it is present, the monthly direction check is the most important practice in the architecture because it catches the misalignment before it has compounded into a decade of the wrong direction. And when the answer is yes, when the direction is genuinely yours, when the flow and the direction are aligned, when the signal and the movement are the same, the monthly check is confirmation, evidence, the fuel that sustains the long work. Seasonally, the deeper inventory. 4 times a year, at the turning of the seasons, create a more spacious version of the work. A day or half a day of genuine retreat from the ordinary demands, of return to the larger questions. Where am I? Not geographically, energetically. What is the quality of the signal right now, assessed honestly from the body rather than the mind? What has cleared since the last season? What is still present that needs attention? What is beginning to emerge that was not visible before? And what is the next season for? What is the specific, genuine, signal-aligned intention for the coming 3 months? Not a to-do list. An energetic orientation. A quality of inner state to cultivate. A direction for the flow. These seasonal practices are the rhythm of a conscious life. The specific, repeating structure of a person who is not drifting through time, but actively, intentionally, joyfully engaging with the direction that is genuinely theirs. There will be times, there are always times, when the flow stops. Not because you have failed, not because the work has been insufficient, not because the signal is broken, or the direction is wrong, or the field has stopped responding. Because flow is not a permanent state, it is a returning state. It is the ground you return to again and again from whatever has temporarily covered it. And the things that cover it are many and real. Grief covers it. And genuine grief deserves to be given its full, unforced expression rather than managed into a quicker resolution than it naturally finds. Illness covers it. Loss covers it. The genuine difficulty of particular seasons of life, the ones in which the appropriate response is not to push harder toward flow, but to be, with honesty and compassion, in the season you are actually in. There is a particular wisdom in the Taoist and the Celtic and many indigenous traditions that understands life not as a linear progression toward an ever better state, but as a cycle. Winter is not the absence of summer. It is winter. It has its own qualities, its own beauty, its own specific kind of aliveness that is available nowhere else. The tree that is bare in January is not a failed tree. It is a tree in its winter season, doing the invisible underground work that the spring growth requires. This is the understanding that the culture of force most profoundly lacks. The inability to be in the winter season without treating it as a problem to be solved, without forcing the spring before the ground is ready. Genuine flow includes the winter, the fallow period, the time of apparent stillness that is underneath the most important movement of all, the root deepening, the resource gathering, the invisible preparation for the growth that is coming. When the flow stops, when the quality of aligned engagement is temporarily unavailable, when the signal is harder to read, when the direction is less clear, the practice is not to force the return of flow. It is to be honestly, compassionately, patiently in the season that is present, to rest without guilt, to be fallow without the forced culture's condemnation of non-productivity, to trust that the winter, given the space it needs, will yield to the spring that is already at the level of the field, already done. Let me tell you about Keiko. Keiko was 35 and had been for 3 years in genuinely beautiful flow in her creative work. The best 3 years of her professional life. The most aligned, the most productive in the deepest sense, the most genuinely expressive of her actual frequency. She had done the inner work, found the signal, followed the direction. It had been extraordinary. And then, without apparent warning, without any external cause she could identify, it stopped. Not dramatically, gradually. The quality of engagement dimmed, the aliveness in the work reduced, the sense of genuine calling, which had been so present and so reliable, became quieter, and then quieter still until one morning, she sat at her work and could feel almost nothing. She was terrified. She interpreted the stopping as failure, as the loss of something she had worked hard to find and was now, somehow, losing. She tried to force it back, through more effort, more practice, more pushing in the direction that had previously been so generously responsive. And the force made it worse, because the winter, forced into a performance of spring, cannot do its work. The shift came when Keiko allowed the winter to be winter, when she stopped trying to force the return of the flow and began, instead, to be honestly in the season that was present, when she allowed herself to rest, to read, to walk, to be in the world without producing anything, without demonstrating to herself or anyone else that the flow had returned. She spent 4 months in that winter, 4 months that felt from within the force culture's framework like loss, like failure, like the abandonment of everything she had built. They were not. They were the deepest, most invisible, most important work of her creative life, the period in which the ground was doing what ground does in winter, gathering, deepening, preparing the soil for what was coming. The flow returned, more completely than it had been before the winter, more deeply rooted, more genuinely hers. Not because she forced it, because she trusted it, because she gave the winter what the winter needed, and understood finally that the winter was not the interruption of their flow, it was part of it. We have arrived at the place this series has been building toward. Not a technique, not a protocol, not a final framework to be applied, but a quality of understanding. Precise, embodied, genuinely earned through the work of 10 conversations of what a life lived from flow actually is. It is a life that is genuinely yours. Not the life the culture tells you should want. Not the life assembled from the comparison and the force culture's definition of success and the unconscious adoption of someone else's direction. Not the life of the surface self, the conditioned, performing, managing self, but the life of the genuine self, the original frequency, the one that has been gradually, patiently, layer by layer, emerging through the work. It is a life in which the signal is clearer than the noise. Not always, not perfectly, but increasingly, reliably, as a genuine baseline that has been built through the accumulated practice of returning. To the silence, to the open hand, to the right questions, to the open door, to the ventral vagal state, to the pattern understood rather than feared, to the flow rather than the force. It is a life in which difficulty is met rather than managed, in which the difficult feelings complete their arcs rather than being stored in the body, in which the patterns are recognized as the portals they are rather than the punishments they feel like, in which winter is given its proper season rather than being forced into premature spring. It is a life in which desire is held from fullness rather than from lack, in which the wanting is the clean, spacious, open-handed wanting of a being who is already, in the essential sense, enough, in which what is called in by the signal is received with a genuine, undefended gratitude of someone who was never actually waiting for permission to have it. It is a life in which the body is listened to rather than overridden, in which the nervous system is tended to rather than pushed past, in which the physiological wisdom of the ancient system that predates every thought you have ever had is given its proper authority in the decisions and the direction and the daily quality of the life. And it is a life that serves, not from depletion, from the overflow of a being who has enough of themselves to give genuinely, who can be present with other people without needing to manage what their presence stirs, who can love without the performance of love and create without the performance of creativity and live without the performance of living. This is the life the signal, when it is clear, is pointing toward. And it is not somewhere ahead. It is not the reward for completing the work. It is the quality of the work itself, lived daily in the specific and ordinary and completely extraordinary texture of a human life in progress. You are in it now, even here, in this moment, in the imperfect and genuine way of a person who is still in the middle of the journey. You are already living the life that is genuinely yours. The signal is already shifting. The frequency is already different than it was when you arrived at the first conversation. Not complete, but genuinely, measurably, undeniably different. In every conversation you have chosen to have, every moment of genuine turning toward rather than away, every practice returned to, every pattern approached with understanding rather than fear, every time you have chosen the open hand over the closed fist, has contributed to this, has contributed to the signal, to the frequency, to the increasingly clear, increasingly coherent, increasingly powerful broadcast of the life that is genuinely and irreducibly yours. The universe is responding to that signal, right now, with the perfect, mechanical, unconditional precision it has always brought to every signal. And what it is finding in your signal, more and more with every increment of genuine inner work, is the frequency of flow, the frequency of a being who is increasingly at home in themselves and therefore at home in the world. And the world it reflects back is changing accordingly. Trust that, not as wishful thinking, as the most honest assessment of the most fundamental mechanism available to a conscious human being. You are the signal. The signal is shifting. Everything follows from the signal. 10 conversations. And the 10th one has brought us here, to the understanding that all of it, from the very first word of the very first conversation, was always pointing in one direction, toward you, toward the genuine, original, completely irreplaceable frequency of the specific person you actually are, beneath the conditioning and the noise and the patterns and the force, in the silence, in the flow, in the quality of aliveness that arises when a human being is moving in genuine alignment with the deepest nature of who they are. That is what the universe is responding to. That is what the field reflects. That is what the completed future is made of. That is what the version of you that has it all carries. Not achievement, not performance, not the accumulation of enough external evidence to finally, conclusively, permanently convince the self that it is enough. You, simply, wholly, completely you. The signal of that self. Clear, coherent, ventral vagal, open-handed, genuinely present, is the most powerful frequency available to a human being. It is the frequency that reality responds to with the greatest precision, the greatest generosity, the greatest alignment between inner state and outer experience. And it is not something you have to become. It is what you are when the layers clear. Keep clearing, not with force, with the patient, compassionate, daily practice of returning to the ground, to the silence, to the open hand, to the right questions, to the feeling that needs to be felt, to the completed version of the life that already exists waiting for the signal to align with it. Return every day, in the ordinary moments of an ordinary life, not as a project, but as a practice, not as a destination, but as a direction. The direction is yours, the signal is yours, the frequency is yours, and the life that forms around it. The specific, beautiful, imperfect, completely genuine life that forms when a human being is living from their actual signal rather than from the force of a self that never quite believed it was enough. That life is already done, already waiting, already yours. Flow toward it. If this series has given you something real, if something across these 10 conversations has shifted, deepened, cleared, opened, I want to warmly invite you to stay in this space. Subscribe if you haven't. The next series of conversations is forming, and it goes deeper still, into the specific, practical, moment-by-moment territory of living this understanding in the full complexity of a real human life. The subscribe button is right below. One click, and this keeps finding you. Leave one word in the comments. The word that names the quality of the life you are choosing to flow toward. Not forcing, choosing, from the ground, from the signal, from the genuine, already present, completely real frequency of who you actually are. One word. It is the signal. It is the beginning. I'll see you in the next one. Flow.